Have you ever felt so exhausted and drained that you're left questioning if you're burning out? Hi, I'm Flic Taylor, and my passion for burnout and self-care came about when I became a mental health writer who'd lost her mental health to extreme burnout. I know, the irony is not lost on me. Join me as I host Everyday Burnout Conversations, the honest podcast that shares the stories of others from all walks of life as they recover from, manage and avoid burnout by prioritising their mental health and well-being. Expect to hear fascinating conversations, plus positive and actionable tips and tricks that can help you make the simple life changes your mental health will thank you for. Episodes will be delightfully wrapped up in some epic truths and great humour. So, enjoy! Today I share an everyday burnout conversation with writer and author Laura Jane Williams. Laura is the author of 4 novels, 2 memoirs, 1 audiobook and another forthcoming novel. The rights to her international bestseller Our Stop have been sold for television, and her books have been translated into over a dozen languages. In this episode, Laura chats about her burnout experience and how it came hand in hand with a diagnosis of anxiety and depression. She talks about her multiple brushes with burnout over the years, along with the golden moments where she prioritised her health over her work. It was fascinating to hear how she found herself managing burnout while simultaneously experienced success of her first book. And so it's no wonder that her second memoir, Ice Cream for Breakfast, has brought many, like myself, great comfort during their own burnouts. I adore Laura's wit and honesty in her writing and feel her magic shines through brightly in this podcast too. So, without further ado, enjoy this everyday burnout conversation with Laura Jane Williams. Laura, it's such a treat to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me. First off, I do want to say a huge, big, whopping thank you for your incredible writing. Like, I followed you for years on Instagram and like your articles and your book. I've read all of your books, including The Life Diet, The Audible part 1. And every time it's like, I feel so seen. It's like a comforting blanket, whether it's fiction or non-fiction. Darling, just adore it. So thank you very much, because I know I am not the only one in the world who's going, oh, lovely. I can see a writing again on Instagram. There's something else coming in the pipeworks.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much.
Oh,
yeah, it's funny. You don't realise how long you've been trucking away until somebody says, oh, back when you did da-da-da, and you're like, when was that? What?
Yeah. Yeah. See, I can remember reading Ice Cream for Breakfast, and that was literally at the very beginning of my burnout, and I didn't even realize I was burning out, because you're just in it, aren't you?
Yeah.
And I can remember just feeling like, oh, such reassurance because of what you kind of, similar to you, I kind of did my dream job of writing. I'm like, I'm doing what I want to do. Why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling so numb and tired and drained? So it was a real gem. So I would love you to start by sharing your story with those listening. That would be amazing.
Well, I think I had probably had iterations of burnout, and certainly my burnout came hand in hand with a mild depression and anxiety diagnosis. And I now recognize that those feelings, it's like the blood runs through your body in a different way. I'd had that before, and obviously it had gone totally undiagnosed. I'm thinking of a particular kind of incident when it was a Christmas in my last year of school, and I think from being on that exam treadmill and pushing myself and feeling scared about my place in the world, but my first official diagnosis came just before my first book came out, and I think because of a lot of things, really. I had spent 18 months traveling. So I was in a heightened sense of, I was sort of a digital nomad right as that was taking off as being a thing. And so I was working from every corner of the globe, from Switzerland to Italy to Bali to India, like to the shed in my parents' garden, like you name it, I had been there, always going there. And so I think that rootlessness, in that time, I got an agent, we sold my book, I finished writing my book. So 6 months before it came out, I went to London, had roots for the first time, and explicitly remember, probably I put roots down in the January, February, and by the end of March, I remember walking down the street thinking, it is bright and sunny and I cannot feel the sun on my face.
Wow, yeah.
There is something wrong. And this was, the mental health as a concept. I remember using that phrase on the phone to my mum, who is very compassionate, is very empathetic. But I remember her saying, mental health, what are you on about? You're not mental.
Yeah.
So this was just right before it kind of became common parlance. So that was very, very scary. And I think from walking down the street and knowing I couldn't feel the sun on my face, it probably took another month before I went to the doctors. And so by the time, this dream of having a book came true, and I was in press and I was being interviewed, and the Telegraph came to my house to take my picture, and I was a children's nanny, not doing any other work. I was medicated and just trying to get through the day. And like those two things were my truths that I was holding at the same time. On one end of the scale, like my dreams were coming true. The Telegraph were photographing me at the house. The book was in Waterstones, and then the other side, I could barely get out of bed. And had become a part-time children's nanny to have that reason to get out of bed.
Yeah.
So that is the very long version of, just because it's not simple, is it? There's no pithy answer to that question. It's when you're swimming in it, and it's, it's so much, and it is the so much that for me was a hindrance in initially identifying the issue. It was like a slow drowning, or I suppose it was a little bit like being in the bath and adding in more and more hot, and not realizing until you're about to faint that you've made the bath too hot.
Yeah.
That was kind of how, just slowly, it happened.
Yeah. It's so difficult to articulate to others, isn't it? And I do worry, I don't know about you, Laura, I do worry, especially with the pandemic. I think we've been cruising towards this for a long time, but I do think a lot of people are burning out, and they don't even know. They don't even know.
I think we're all running on empty because we can't properly refill our tanks.
Yes.
There's only so many walks through your local woods. Oh, I didn't know this was here. Yeah, well, it's been 18 months now. So what are we going to do? I literally just had 48 hours away in London, and, it barely touched the sides, but it felt like a little bit of my old life.
Ooh.
Just a little bit, enough to go, all right, we'll get through the rest of the summer now.
Yeah, like, let's keep going. Yeah, it's so true. And I think whatever age you are, we're all kind of having a struggle right now. Really
I feel for the kids that have been leaving school, just robbed of those last weeks, the uncertainty with exams, knowing where I was with all of that as I was leaving school. But yeah, hard for everybody. I do feel for the kids though. It's such an important time in your life to be robbed of.
It really is. So you went through that and wrote so beautifully about it in Ice Cream for Breakfast. And I put all your books in the show notes, but I really hope people reach out and get to. It was funny because obviously in preparation for this interview, I was going through and I was just like, I need to reread it. I need to go through it. Like, it's full of highlighter pen, but I need to reread it because there's like this made me feel so much better. Page 99. When you don't know what to do next, in work, in love, in life, do nothing. Just for a little bit longer. Don't know, be unsure, for a little bit more time. The answer will reveal itself. It always does. I so needed to see that last week. Because
it's so hard to do, though. It's so hard to do.
Yeah. Oh, incredible.
Because we think action is progress. And I wrote that because sometimes inaction is progress. Just wait. It's not going anywhere. Calm down. I'm such a chaser. The thought of like, just stop and take a breath. And I have just seen my friend Natasha, and I sent her a voice note by the time I got home. And I was like, I just so admire, the lady's not for rushing in anything. In anything. It's amazing. It's so inspiring to me. So yeah, I definitely put that in, not because I've mastered it, but because I need to be reminded of it.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a powerful little blurb that you're like, oof, I need to almost look at it every Monday morning to remind myself, So
thank you.
What do you do now, Laura, to help you kind of keep burnout at bay?
Well, it's funny because right at the beginning of the pandemic, it's not the first time I've felt the tug of depression sort of on my jacket sleeve. And I was like, I'm not okay. And I was really deliberate about how I navigated that. And I was totally overworked. I knew one of my projects had to go. I couldn't do all the projects that I was juggling. And I was working with a production company to develop some early scripts for a TV adaptation of my first novel, Our Stop, which is like the dream, but also was contracted to write a novel a year for the next 4 years. And there was this sort of looming threat. People were talking about this thing you could get just by breathing other people's air, which, by the time lockdown came, for me, it was this huge relief, like it was for so many, of finally we've got some direction. But I deliberately reached out to specific people I know who were adapting their own work for screen, to both my screenwriting agent and my literary agent, and was like, look, this is a situation. What do you think? I have a real I'm a proper bridge burner. I'm not proud of it. I'm getting better as I go older. And I knew the worst thing to do would just be like, right, see ya, disappear off the face of whatever project I decided to bin. I was really deliberate about it. And actually I left London a couple of years ago to move to the country. But London, cut me, and I bleed a love for London. And so went down there and met up with my best friend, and we just walked miles around the city and ate red velvet cake. And I was telling him all about it, and was just so proud of and he was like, I think you know what you've got to do. The adaptation sounds like the dream, but that's the only thing that really can go, and something has to go. And I've never turned down work in my life. So it felt huge. It felt huge and like something I could regret. But at some point, this career that I've been growing, of course, there's going to be too much for me to manage. And so picking what I wanted to manage. So that felt like a real win, to take that breath and to talk to key people and say, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not sure why, but will you bear witness to me figuring this out? And then there was a global pandemic and we all had a big meltdown. So at least I wasn't alone.
Oh my God. No, absolutely not. My goodness. Oh, so what kind of things have you been doing in the pandemic? Because it's so hard, as you say, we don't have access to the things that we would use to fill our cups up.
Yeah, I was right at the start of developing my next novel, so I kind of would have been in hibernation mode
Okay.
anyway. And my only role in the pandemic, was to stay home in my pants drinking Sauvignon Blanc and writing stories. So I kind of escaped into my work, but I was doing walks, I was doing long voice notes with friends. We had the glorious weather. So it didn't feel, for me, it wasn't that laborious. I think, and this is, this shows my privilege, but it doesn't make it any less true. The thing I've struggled with is not having travel plans in the diary. Mm-hmm. So I'm very good at nose to the grindstone, get it done, but need that thing in the diary of, and that's when we're going to let loose, and that's what the work is all for, and that's the bit that I've struggled with. So yeah, especially as we got into the third lockdown in January, it was like, there's not even any sunlight. What am I supposed to do? Eat. I have found comfort in food, and I've let myself.
Me too.
And I know I'm not the only one. Get your kicks where you can. There's a season for everything. And I think the season of a pandemic is, where are the biscuits?
Baked goods.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And they're delicious. And I'm going to enjoy them. And then one day I'll swap it for an apple. But right now, no.
Yeah. I'll have a box of cookies with a vitamin chaser, please. You got any of them chewy vitamins? I'll have one of them. That's
it. I'll pretend they're sweets.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh dear. So would you say that, because I'm sure like you, I felt that I've learned a lot from my burnout. And I've learned to be a lot more gentle on myself, whereas before I was pretty hard and quite mean to myself in a way.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it, when you're like a freelancer, and I've spoken to other writers too, and I think it's a little bit of a trait within us, we're pretty harsh on ourselves, and I don't know how to step out of that.
I actually but I'm talking to you from my desk, and I've got a post-it that says, I'm not available for making it hard. Ooh. And that is something I just try and come back to. Amanda Francis wrote that on her Instagram, or was talking about it on her Instagram, and I was like, I'm going to write that down. I'm not available for making it hard. The thing that I'm cultivating now is a belief within me that it can be easy and worthwhile, or that which is worthwhile can also be easy. That it can flow, that I can trust. I was at lunch with some friends the other week, and I said, I've realized through all of this is that I'm the worst kind of high maintenance person, because I've always thought I was low maintenance, but I'm a high maintenance person that now owns the fact that she's high maintenance, and I'm waiting for the other three women around the table to interrupt and say, no, you're not high maintenance, and just silence. And then one friend went, well, good for you, babe. And I was like, oh, so okay, I am high maintenance, and now I'm owning that I'm high maintenance. But part of that is this desire to control. And, I'm so incredibly proud of the life that I've built, my personal life and my professional life. For so long, I was only proud of my professional life. Now I'm proud of everything. And that has come from diligence and application and ambition and thoughtfulness. Another word for which is being a control freak. It depends which way you look at it. And so now I'm trying to let go of the control, to embrace, for example, as I talk to you today, I'm thick in edits for my next novel for next summer. But also I've planned to go and see a pal for ages and ages. And so I could either punish myself for booking in to see my pal and work till midnight and turn up bleary-eyed and tired and not enjoy it.
Yes.
Or I can go, do you know what? I've actually done 4 solid hours. After 4 hours, my concentration's not that good anyway. I know what I need to be thinking about in my head over these next few days. Put the editing away, thoughtfully curate a beautiful suitcase of lovely dresses, a nice champagne to take with you, and then come back to it. And like, yeah, not punishing myself as much. What is it? There's something really like Puritan about it, and something really like, I literally live just down the road from the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
So like that concept of the longer you work, the more you produce. You know, we didn't know what a weekend was until the unions got involved, and then we had Sundays off. And my friend Tiff does a podcast called Is This Working?
Oh,
my friends, Tiff and Anna. And I remember Tiff talking about like back in the day when we imagined robots, we thought that was going to be the end of like the manual labor, or at the very least reduce our days. And actually that's just not happened for so many of us. Like, why?
Blurred lines, isn't it? It's blurred.
Yeah.
We're really not shutting off. And I'm really guilty of that, because I kind of go into that mindset of I need to achieve an awful lot and want to do a lot, and I've got my to-do list. And I think that's what makes us produce the goods. But at the same time, the flip side is if you teeter on the edge, not good for our mental health. Because I can remember listening to, I think it was Chloe Brotheridge's podcast, and said that ice cream for breakfast was an Irish twin to becoming, like, you had written 9 months, but you put that down to radical self-care. So you kind of got the balance there.
Yeah, that was that was such like an intense period of growth for me, that Becoming came out. I started to nanny. I was alluding to it on Instagram, where I continue to build a community of just, you know, the best of social media, that sort of like-minded people. And the same publisher of Becoming were like, we want to write something about like embracing your inner child and everything you're going through. You know, if you could just put it in a Word document instead of Instagram, that you're onto something. But in that time, I had also become a dating columnist for Grazia.
Okay.
So it was just so bizarre. It was like the minute that I stepped back and let myself breathe, the more I was being like more deliberate, you know, because I had stepped back. I had time to date. And I remember swimming in Stoke Newington Leisure Centre and being like, I'm dating so much, it's practically my job. Maybe I should make it my job. Writing a pitch to somebody at Grazia who had reached out to say, I loved Becoming. And I was like, hi, you said you loved Becoming. Well, so on paper, it's like, so sorry, you had 2 books out in 9 months, and you were a dating columnist, and you were a part-time nanny. But I did in a lot of ways feel like I had more mental space, and so much of that is just by owning the fact I wasn't okay and I was going through it.
Yes. Yeah.
And that sounds like the easiest thing in the world now on the other side of it. At the time, you know, there was shame and embarrassment and, well, every other emotion you can imagine. But owning it. So it was an Irish twin. There was 9 months between Becoming and Ice Cream for Breakfast. And after that, I didn't have a book out for 2 years. I was done so.
Right.
And now I'm back to
you were doing articles for Red and Grazia, and you were amazing. Do you think you would ever step back into the pool of burnout?
Well, it's more like, it's funny because I did have this deeply transformative experience, painful but transformative, right on the cusp of it becoming this common parlance. So I feel like I contributed, by talking honestly, I contributed to, even if it was just one more person who read Ice Cream for Breakfast going, God, yeah, I've not been okay either. But also meant I was able to be a better friend, better sister, better family member to anybody else subsequently going through it. So it did give me a level of empathy I didn't have before.
I think
and
that's
I'm not
true in your characters, Laura.
Oh, thank
I really do,
you.
darling. I really do.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so
Both
much.
with Penny from the Four Square and Annie.
Yeah, thank you.
It comes through. Oh, I've gone goosebumpy, because I think when I read about these women, I think that's what makes me feel so seen.
Yeah, because it's hard. I do try and create these characters now who, especially in my first two books, in Our Stop and the Love Square, I wanted these women who were very secure with what they did at work, but had this longing for their personal life. Yeah. In my first book, she worked a lot and was happy about it. In my second book, Penny had recovered from an illness and went, it's just not worth it for me. This is how my hierarchy of needs looks, and I'm happy with that. And a bloke's just got to fit in it. Yeah. And then in The Lucky Escape, I wanted to explore, we put so much pressure on, girl boss. Yeah, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I was like, what if this character has a very good job, but actually isn't asked about it, doesn't care, it's not for her, wants to do something else. So just exploring all of those facets that can exist within one woman at different times and in different places of her life, I think. Yeah. So it's a very kind thing for you to say. Thank you.
The fact that Annie, she was forced to just sit in that pain, that's kind of something that really resonated with me, because I don't know about you, but in my life, I'm just a grafter, I'm proactive, and, I always see the glass half full. And so I find it very difficult to be sad. It's almost like I have to be my sad. I have to make it like, oh, I'm growing. Like, how about you just sit and cry and feel like a little bit of this is sad.
I think it was just as Our Stop was coming out. I actually I love writing books. I'm not very good at releasing books. I always enter, and I know lots of writers that do this, like around publication, it's just horrible. There's just something that happens. And I remember a friend introducing me then to the concept of toxic positivity. Right. And I'd never heard of that before. I didn't know that it could actually be quite damaging to be like, well, it could be worse, or at least I've learned this, or, and that to sit in it. Yeah. Again, as we started, don't do anything just for a minute. Just take a breath. So hard.
I was going to say it's the simplest thing to do, but my gosh, is it hard? It's so hard. Yeah. And I think a lot of people listen to this, it'll hit the spot,
thank you.
Because I think and this is, I guess, when you've been through something and then you pass on that wisdom, that's the greatest thing from it, isn't it?
And that's why I love to tell stories, that's why I love to consume stories, that's why I love to follow other people's real life stories. We are storytellers, and it's how we learn. And the rhetoric around who is allowed to share stories now and who isn't. Yes, let's acknowledge our privilege, but a lot of us are privileged and still hurt. Right. So Elizabeth Day talks really wonderfully about that, I think, especially on How to Fail, her podcast. So we are just intrinsically storytellers. I'm so interested in what other people have to say and giving my contribution, and that's humanness, surely.
Yes, exactly, and empathy at the core, like wanting to know, wanting to step into someone else's shoes, wanting to look at those common similarities we share, even if we come from different worlds. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Amazing, Laura. I'm looking at the time. So I've been ending all of my interviews with some questions, some quick fire, light-hearted questions, if you're up for it.
Of course.
Everyone has a slightly different take. So then let's have a look at the on your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for lemon in water or lemon in gin? Where do you take your vitamin C, love?
I do a bit of both.
Yeah.
I do a bit of both. I do have a wine merchant who was delivering New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc by the box load in the pandemic, and then realised I was treating it like a challenge, not a treat. And so it was like, do you know what? I don't think this is. I'll just put a bit of lemon in some mineral water. So it does depend. Let me tell you now, I have just got no sense of balance. I'm either at one end or the other. So if I'm on the gin, I'm on the gin. If I'm on the water, I'm on the water. And never the twin shall meet.
You're living life to the full. Whatever extreme that is, you're going all in.
It's my Scorpio moon. I don't know what to tell you. It's my Scorpio moon.
Fantastic. Now, do you move your body or move the remote?
I do enjoy moving my body. But you are talking to me 18 months into a global pandemic where, I'm sorry, I've done Netflix. I've finished Netflix. I've finished Amazon Prime. I've finished Apple TV. There's been a lot of sitting on my bum. But it's funny you asked the question. As soon as I've done these edits, I'm like, I can feel it. I just want to get back in the gym and I want to feel strong again. I don't feel strong and I'm feeling a bit creaky. Yes. And I do not enjoy that. That is not worth.
Yeah. My knees. In the morning, I'm
like,
yeah.
It's lovely to binge Ted Lasso, but I would prefer to bend down to pick up a towel off the bathroom floor without going, oof. If I had to choose.
It's so true. Ted, hang on a minute.
Yeah. I'm just stuck picking up this towel because my whole body hurts, even though I'm only 35. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back in the gym and getting strong again for sure.
Sounds good. Now, are you bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers?
Bag of Maltesers.
With tea. Amazing. Yeah.
Just why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Now, exactly. In the go. Now, do you ask for help or are you happy to hermit?
I'm a hermit, then I ask for help.
Me too.
And I'm getting better at asking for help. Like I say, last year, March 2020, going, I'm not okay. Something's not right. And speaking out about it, I'm really proud of that.
You should be. You really should be. It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I wonder if saying how easier. Do you think it's a practice thing? I'm completely asking for myself here. I'm like, will it get easier?
And I think the more that we hear other people, I read something today that was like, it was about mothers, but I think it's applicable to anybody. Ask them how they are, and when they say fine, ask them again.
Yes.
And it reminds me of, when you're trying to convert to Judaism and you have to ask the rabbi 3 times because they have to check that you're serious. I'm thinking about a very specific episode of Sex and the City when I reference that, by the way. I assume it's just true for all of Judaism. It was on Sex and the City. It must be true. Yes. So the idea of, oh, how are you doing? Fine. How are you really? And just doing that follow-up. So somebody goes, well, do you know what? I'm bloody knackered, but I'm getting through. I do think is a way to access that truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I had someone reach out to me when they read a few of my blogs on burnout, and they said, like, I'm really not doing well. My kids aren't doing well. When I ask my friends, they say they're fine. We're all bloody lying. I'm like, like, and you're right. It is asking, like, you okay? Really? You okay?
Yeah. I will say the height of the pandemic, we were all just trying to get through it. And so taking on anybody else's stuff was impossible. I do think we all thought we were doing each other a favor by, because it was just so scary.
Yeah.
So scary.
Yeah. A surreal, intense period of time. That I feel with, certainly my family, we're still in it. I've got a 14-year-old and 12-year-old. and, you know, they're saying, I'm done with walking and going on a bike ride. I want to walk to somewhere, go on a bike ride to somewhere. Like, you need it's in that purpose now.
Yeah.
Whilst,
even just sitting in my cousin's back garden, you know, I cannot believe that was illegal. I passed a woman in a park sat on a rock eating a sandwich, and she looked up at me and went, please don't dob me in. And in what world is sitting on a rock to eat a sandwich illegal? And I just went, you've got no worries from me, Duck. I've got a bag of crisps in my bag myself. You know, it's just bizarre.
Oh, I can remember listening to the Two Shot podcast, and I think Craig was interviewing Kerry Goodman from Afterlife, and she was sharing a story that she went out for a walk in the park with her son, and her son was like, Mum, there's 2 women in that bush with a bottle of wine. She's like, leave them alone. They're having fun. Leave them to it. I was like, it's true. This is what we've responded to. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 women in a bush with a bottle of Whispering Angel. I mean,
whatever works.
It's been hard.
It has.
You know, and we're not through it yet. And that's the thing, just because we're over it doesn't mean it's over.
Yeah.
But at least it's not illegal to have a sandwich on a rock anymore. At least not in England at the time of of recording.
It's true. I know we're just okay here, but we'll see what happens. So lastly, what's the one thing you're going to do today that your future self is going to thank you for?
I think tomorrow Laura is going to be thankful that she's put the editing away for the day.
Oh, well done.
So that she can wash her hair and pack a bag and just arrive feeling refreshed and not. I used to do it, you know, every Christmas I got really poorly, that I would skid into Christmas on my knees and be exhausted and have to use it as a time for recovery. And me and my friend Claire for the past couple of years have said, no, December is when you have to start taking your foot off the pedal, so that you enjoy that like restorative, beautiful family time, and just don't run yourself ragged. So it's the same thing. The thing tomorrow, Laura is going to be so thankful that she ironed a dress, packed a case, and washed her hair. That's what I'm going to do. And the editing will still be there when I'm back at my desk on Friday.
With fresh eyes, and you'll probably be able to go through it quicker.
I mean, that's what I'm telling myself, Flic. Is it true? I don't know. But the point is, it doesn't have to be. I can be just as confused by these structural edits as I am today. But at least I've had a rest.
You've had a rest. You'll be feeling good. Yeah. It's all good. Yeah. And you're continuing to put out magic into the world.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God, I just loved it. Oh, so good. So good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time today, darling. It was such a treat, and I'm so thrilled I was able to talk to you about
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Burnout Conversations. Please check the show notes for any links to items discussed today, and the original music and sound editing is by Chris Taylor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and have a spare few minutes, then it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave me a happy starry rating and review. It really does help this podcast reach a little further, and I'd just love it to land in the lap of those who, like me, last year are perhaps feeling isolated and lonely in their burnout struggle. Please note, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. Remember, you matter, so don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or mental health professional for support if you're having a rough time. Wishing you a great week and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.